Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the live game review, Crystal Palace 3, Everton 1 on Sunday afternoon. Another defeat for Everton, another defeat for Rafael Benitez, and a defeat that, as I've said over the last couple of days, for me, should probably see the end of Rafa Benitez's time as the Everton manager. Completely voids the win against Arsenal a week ago yesterday. Of course, we thought that, maybe that win would give the team a little bit of confidence, a little bit of momentum, maybe a boost. It was a big win. The crowd was absolutely fantastic at Goodison Park. The players reacted to that. It was the best performance, arguably, of the season, and there was absolutely no reason as to why we couldn't take that performance and take the momentum from it and the confidence from it and turn up at Selhurst Park on Sunday against, let's be honest, a Crystal Palace side who haven't been great in recent weeks. Yes, they're doing okay, this season, and they've had some good weeks and they've had some bad weeks, but at the moment, in the current run of form, they weren't in very good form whatsoever. So it wasn't beyond, the realms of possibility that Everton were to turn up there and put in an half-decent shift and come out with all 3 points and actually build some real momentum and some real positivity ahead of a couple of really difficult fixtures starting on Thursday, only a couple of days' time, against Chelsea. But that's just not what Everton do. Everton don't seem to string 2 wins together. In fact, half of this team can't even seem to string 2 passes together, never mind 2 wins together. We don't take that momentum, we don't take that confidence. Any other Premier League team, when they're in a bad run of form, typically they pick up 1 win, especially a win in the way that, Arsenal panned out, obviously going behind after an offside goal and then coming back and the players showing fight and the atmosphere being there and the last minute winner. Any other footballing team, in not only in the Premier League, probably in Europe, that is in that situation and gets that win, goes on then to build a little bit of confidence, build a little bit of momentum, feeling, a little bit more about themselves and turn up in the next game. And if they're playing a side that are very beatable, more often than not, they go on and win that game as well. But not Everton. No, not Everton. We just revert back to the usual shite that we've been, used to, or that we've been putting up with for the last 2 months, month and a half, 2 months. And it's the same every single season, isn't it, really? The games, like the Arsenal game, the results, like the Arsenal result and that performance, they become the one-off, and the performances like your Crystal Palace, like your Brentford, like your Wolves, like your Watford, they're the results that you start to expect week in, week out. It used to be the opposite. It used to be, as an Everton fan, that, you maybe 1 week you'll get an absolutely terrible result that you're sort of sitting there going, I'm not really sure what's gone on there, but more often than not, we'd put in a performance, we'd fight, we'd battle, and, we mightn't always have won, but more often than not, we'd be putting in a performance that you'd sit back and go, do you know what, we were okay today. Whereas nowadays, more often than not, we're putting in performances that make us all sit here, scratch at our heads and think, what is the point anymore? What's the point in this football club? What is the direction? Where are we going? If you ask me now, where did Everton Football Club going? I'd say on the speed train to relegation. We've bought the first class ticket at the front of one of those, dead fast bullet trains that goes about 73 billion miles an hour, and our destination is the Championship, and we're bang on the front row getting served champagne on the way there at the moment, because that's just the way it is. And it's a really sad state of affairs to be in. I hope that the game against Arsenal, I hope that the win against Arsenal would propel us, would give us a little bit of confidence, would at least give us some momentum to turn up and put a half-decent shift in on Sunday. Crystal Palace weren't great on Sunday, but we made them look like prime Barcelona. We had 22% possession in that first half. We didn't have much more in the second half. We allowed them to come at us. We allowed them to put pressure on us. We allowed them to get into offensive areas, to create chances, to push us back, to press us. And we almost just turned up with this defeatist mentality before the game had even kicked off. Now, I'm really confused, because this Everton team turned up against Arsenal on Monday and put in a performance that would have beaten Crystal Palace comfortably had they have replicated it only days later. But they didn't. Is it because they can't be arsed? Is it because they don't want to put in that performance again? Is it because they sort of knew that, in the game against Arsenal, they couldn't get away with just walking around and not really playing to the best of their abilities, because, they knew that the fans would get on the back, and whereas the Crystal Palace game, not as many Evertonians there away from home, they can maybe get away with that performance a little bit more? Or are these players just genuinely not interested in the manager and what the manager has to say and the manager's tactics anymore? I've said it for a couple of weeks now since the Merseyside derby. I don't see a way back for Rafa Benitez as the Everton manager. Now, we can talk about the fact that he's had very little to spend in the summer. We can talk about the fact that he's had a plethora of injuries that, we didn't need. And if Twitter rumours are to be believed, it looks like there's a couple more, added onto that as of today. We can talk about all of that. But the reality of the situation is, it doesn't matter the reasons as to why we're in the form that we're in, or the reasons as to why we're currently sitting dangerously close to a relegation battle coming up to Christmas. What matters is the fact that this manager clearly can't motivate these players to go out and put in 2 consecutive decent performances. The fans are completely against them now. There's members of the squad that, are seemingly not happy with his tactics or his style of play. Luca Dean being one of them, and obviously we haven't seen him for a couple of weeks. Now, whether you think Luca Dean's had a good season or not so far, one thing's for sure is to keep a player of his quality out of this squad, given the injury issues that Everton have got, is stupid. It's simple, it's stupid. I'm not saying start him every week. I'm not saying, let the player have control, or don't pull him to one side and talk to him about his problems, but you don't completely take a player of Luca Dean's quality out of the side when you look at our squad at the moment and you look at some of the injuries that we've got and the performances that we're putting in. It's ridiculous, in my opinion. You sort your issues out like adults and you move on and you do what's best for the football club. But this is where I sort of have this problem with Rafa Benitez, is you've heard before, and we knew all of this before he became the manager of Everton Football Club. He's had issues in the past with previous clubs, whether it be with owners, whether it be with players. He's had this sort of ongoing problem over his career where he always falls out with somebody at a club. Now typically it's owners of a football club. He's not going to fall out with Everton owners, because he knows the moment he falls out with Farhad Mashiri or Bill Kenwright or anybody else, he'll be straight out that door, because nobody else wants him at the football club other than those people. So he ain't going to fall out with the board, but instead he's falling out with the players, seemingly, or certainly some of the players, and the fans as well. And as I said, you can talk about injuries, you can talk about, lack of financial backing in the summer, but those things are a separate issue. Tactical decisions on a football pitch and what happens on a Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock or a Sunday afternoon at 4:15 or whenever it is, they're down to the manager and the manager's tactical ineptness, the manager's tactical ineptness. And we've seen far too much of that over the last couple of weeks or so. I appreciate there's other issues at the football club. I get that. I'm not saying Rafa Benitez is the only issue, but Rafa Benitez is very much an issue. And at the end of the day, the problems with Bill Kenwright, the problems with Denise Barrett-Baxendale, the problems with Farhad Mashiri, with our, the money that we spent over the years, with, the communication between the club and the fans. There's a plethora. We could sit here for an hour and a half just talking about the issues that we have with Everton without even going into great depth on any of them. That's because there's so many of those issues. But the reality of the situation is that the league table and the form that we're in and the way we're playing and the fact that players are on the pitch almost looking like they haven't got a clue what's going on or what they need to be doing is down to the manager. And we've won 2 games in 2 months, and when you look at some of the teams that we've played within that period, okay, you've got Manchester City and Liverpool, who are both, by the way, not unbeatable teams. Crystal Palace themselves proved not so long ago that you can beat Manchester City if you perform well enough, and West Ham proved only a couple of weeks ago that you can beat Liverpool if you perform well enough. But let's take those 2 fixtures as 2 games that you maybe look at and think we aren't going to win. So we've had the 2-month period, we've had 11, 12 games, something like that. There's been 2 of those games, we've won 2 in 11 or 12, something like that. And we've only had 2 difficult games in that period of time. And we lost both of those, Manchester City and Liverpool, that you'd maybe push to one side and go, okay, we won't really hold that against the players or the manager or whatever. In that period, we've lost to Wolves, a side we should have been beaten comfortably. Watford, which was, I still think, the worst defeat I've ever witnessed as an Evertonian. Brentford, who brought absolutely nothing, and we still couldn't break them down and create a chance against them. Crystal Palace, who have been in average form recently, off the back of a big win for Everton. We turned up, we lost there. We've lost to Villa, who aren't great. West Ham, okay, who were in relatively, but are beatable. How many games we drew to an awful Tottenham team that we should have beaten, an awful Tottenham team. How long does this continue? That's my question to the Everton board, to Farhad Moshiri. I know you're not watching this. Obviously, Farhad Moshiri isn't watching this. Why the fuck would he be spending his Tuesday night watching me talk about Everton? He's probably sat on some yacht somewhere wondering, what colour our away kit is or something, because he seemingly doesn't know fuck all about football, or hasn't really got a clue about how to run a football club. So I know he's not watching this, but my question is, how long does this continue? If we're going to be sitting here in 3-4 weeks time talking about a hunt for a new manager because Rafa Benitez is being sacked, why are we waiting till that long? What happens if we turn up on Thursday and we get absolutely trampled all over, which is a very, very, very high chance, and some people would say, yeah, but Cam, these are beatable, and we've seen what we did against Arsenal. We're away from home against Chelsea. We never do well away from home against Chelsea in any scenario, in any season. Even when we're playing really, really well, and when the team spirit's good, and when everybody's backing the manager, we very rarely put in a half-decent performance against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. Very rarely, certainly in recent years. This isn't going to change on Thursday. I fully expect Everton to lose again by 3, 4, maybe even more on Thursday. And you might call me negative or pessimistic, etc., etc. But A, we're away from home, and B, this Chelsea team will be looking at Everton thinking, there's a guaranteed 3 points. If I was a betting man, and I do like the occasional bet, but if I was a betting man, this would be the easiest bet you'd ever put on Thursday, in my opinion. I just don't see any way Everton get anything out of this game with the form that we're on at the moment. So what happens if we lose comfortably to Chelsea? Does pressure start to pile on Benitez then? You might say, well, no, because that's a game that we're expected to lose. Okay. We then play Leicester at the weekend, just had a big win against Newcastle. Again, haven't been great this season, but are starting to sort of keep up the table. I think they're sitting in 8th at the moment, which is crazy considering they haven't had a great start to the season. If we lose to them, does he leave? We're then looking at potentially getting towards Christmas, because that's our last game before Christmas. We could well be within only a couple of points away from the relegation zone, depending on which other fixtures go. We play Burnley on Boxing Day. Okay, an easier game, but again, we've just lost to Crystal Palace away from home, and Brentford a couple of weeks before that away from home. Absolutely no surprise if Burnley turn us over again. If we're going to be sitting in this situation in 4 or 5 weeks' time, where we're talking about who we're going to employ as the next manager because Rafa Benitez is being sacked, why aren't we doing it now? I'm seeing people on Twitter saying, he'll be gone if we lose to this team, or he'll be gone when we lose to this team. Well, why haven't they made the decision now? Why are we waiting? Why are we waiting? Why are we almost accepting that the next few fixtures will be defeats in order to sack the manager, when the last 2 months have suggested that he shouldn't be anywhere near a job? And I'm not big on sacking managers or just jumping the gun straight away and saying he needs to go, this, that and the other. Anybody that's watched this channel for for the time that we've been doing it. We've been doing this channel for 3 years now. I've been through Marco Silva, and it took me to the absolute end to say that Marco Silva needed to be sacked. I've been through Carlo Ancelotti, who had some awful times, still didn't say he needed to be sacked. We had the Duncan Ferguson stuff, etc. I'm not one for just coming on after a couple of defeats and saying, get rid of the manager. I'm simply not, and I appreciate that there's other issues at the football club that go beyond Rafa Benitez, and I appreciate that if Rafa Benitez leaves the football club today, there's bigger issues that will continue, as I said, beyond Rafa Benitez, because there's simply massive problems at this football club that have got nothing to do with the manager. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the manager isn't a big problem. And at the end of the day, when you strip it down and you take away all the other problems and you put them to one side, the form that Everton are currently on, winning 2 games in 2 months and losing in the way that we've lost to some of the teams that we've lost to, no disrespect, is enough for the manager to be sacked for me. It's as simple as that, let alone taking his previous connections into consideration and the relationship he has with Evertonians, which is dreadful, by the way. This is some of the most hostile and toxic atmosphere within Everton Football Club I've witnessed in a long time. I can't remember it being this bad. I don't even think it was this bad under Sam Allardyce. I really don't. Fans are fighting in the stands. They're arguing with each other in the stands. But one thing's for sure, I don't think there's any Evertonian out there who wholeheartedly believes that Rafa Benitez is faultless in everything that's going on. There'll be some Blues out there that think he should be given more time and he doesn't deserve the sack for whatever reason. Maybe because he hasn't been given a big transfer budget or because of injuries, etc. But I don't think there's one Blue that could wholeheartedly, sit there and say he's been faultless. He's not done anything wrong. And the reality is, as I said, for me, this hasn't worked. It simply hasn't. I said it a couple of weeks ago. Rafa Benitez needed a perfect start to his Everton career. And by perfect, I don't mean winning every week. I don't mean beating everybody 4 or 5-0. I mean very few injuries. I mean a relatively decent transfer budget to start with. Saying the right things in press conferences. Making the right decisions on the pitch tactically. In terms of team selection, substitutions. And he's got all of that wrong. Now, okay, money and injuries, you could say, aren't really his problem. I understand that. First, by the way, on the topic of injuries, Everton's medical team needs sacking themselves because the amount of injuries we have. I've sat here on a couple of occasions, not even that long ago, I think. I sat here when Abdoulaye Doucouré got injured and talked about us being the unluckiest club in the Premier League or in the world for injuries, and I still think we probably are the unluckiest club in the world for injuries, but I've gone beyond that now. I'm sort of sitting there thinking somebody isn't doing their job properly. Something isn't going well. It's an unnatural amount of injuries. It's as simple as that. It goes beyond us just being unlucky and things just happening in games or on training. There's obviously things that aren't being put in place that are, that could prevent these problems from happening, whether it's training being too hard or too much rigorous sessions, or players being overworked or overstretched or not resting enough, whatever it may be. There's clearly things that can be put into place to avoid the amount of injuries that we have at this football club, and I honestly don't know what the medical team are doing, because they're not doing it well enough effectively. But as I said, you can take injuries, you can take transfer budget. What you can't take out the situation is the fact that Rafa Benitez is solely responsible for team selections, and I can name 2 instances over the last 3 weeks in which he's got that massively wrong. The Merseyside derby, playing 2 in midfield, was disgraceful, and on Sunday against Brentford, playing a 3 in midfield but deciding to against Palace, playing a 3 in midfield but deciding to play Andre Gomes as a number 10 was baffling. Substitutions, losing 1-0 to Brentford with 20 minutes to go, only bringing 1 substitution on. Why? Against Palace on Sunday, bringing Solomon Rondon for Richarlison. Now, I know there's been a little bit in the media over the last couple of days as to suggest that, Richarlison was injured and he's got a calf injury and this, that and the other, but judging by the look on his face when he was taken off, didn't seem like he was injured, as well as the fact that he sort of was seemingly struggling with his calf in the opening, maybe, in the first 20-25 minutes of the first half, and he still continued to play the rest of the first half and then 10 minutes of the second half with no problem, and then all of a sudden he had a calf problem. It's these things, that these decisions and these mistakes that Rafa Benitez is making, that you sort of think you're really not helping yourself. You're not helping yourself. For me, it was just a bad appointment. It was a very, very, very risky appointment, and it was an appointment that had to be absolutely 100% perfect for it to work, and ultimately it hasn't been 100% perfect. It simply hasn't, and it's only so much longer Benitez can blame injuries, or can blame the fact that we haven't got this player, or we haven't got that player, or we haven't got him available or him available. A couple of weeks ago, it was when we get that first win, when we get that win, things will change. When you get that one win on the board, then you start to build confidence. Then we got that one win against Arsenal. Brilliant atmosphere, performance was very good, players were working hard, it was great, it was absolutely brilliant. Defence played really, really well. We didn't then come up against Man City away, or Liverpool away in the derby, or Chelsea away. We come up against, and absolutely no disrespect to any Palace fans that are watching this, we come up against an alright Crystal Palace team. I wouldn't say they were good, I wouldn't say they were bad, they're just alright. Yes, it was away from home, but we should have been more than capable of turning up with that confidence and that momentum we should have taken from Arsenal and winning that game. Let alone take away the result, take away winning, drawing or losing. We should have been more than able to turn up and put a performance in on Sunday against Crystal Palace. Work hard, get at them. We played as if we were playing prime 2008 Barcelona with Lionel Messi on the wings and, Iniesta and Xavi in the midfield and this, that and the other. We were playing a Crystal Palace team that aren't that great. We had 22% possession in the first half. We were defending. We're the only team in the world that is a counter-attacking side that can't attack and can't defend. We're just a shambles. And yes, a lot of that is down to the playing staff. I get that. I get that a lot of these players simply aren't good enough. I understand that. And I get that a lot of these players are confidence-based players, which is just useless, because one week they can be brilliant, the next week they can be atrocious, as we've seen with a number of these players over the years. But a lot of it falls on the manager as well, and as I said, for me, it was an incredibly risky decision that the owner made, and it was a decision that I feel could leave us in a really, really dangerous situation. And the reason for that being is because we've heard Farhad Moshiri very recently come out and talk to his best mate Jim on TalkSport and say how Rafa Benitez will be backed, and now the club are fully behind him, and football's about glory one day and tragedy the next, or whatever he said, whatever shite he come out with. We've then seen, only a couple of days later, Marcel Brands leaving the football club, and I'm not saying Marcel Brands shouldn't have left the football club. I'm not saying that Marcel Brands was completely blameless in this situation either. We've seen a couple of other, members of the recruitment team, head of recruitments leaving the football club, medical staff leaving the football club. We're hearing articles from the news coming out, the same newspaper that broke the news, that Marcel Brands was leaving, also said in the very same statement that Rafa Benitez is due to be given full control of the club. Now, given full control of Everton Football Club to a manager who currently sees us in our worst form in a long, long time, dangerously close to the relegation zone coming up to Christmas, having won 2 games in 2 months, and proving that we're just an utter garbage footballing team with no tactical prowess, no clever decision making from the manager, and very few good quality players, it's baffling that Farhad Moshiri could make that decision. It's absolutely baffling that he thinks that decision is the best decision for this football club. It really, really is. And what worries me even more is the fact that I honestly, and this mightn't be right, and if Farhad Moshiri or any of his people are watching and want to say, want to disagree with me or get in touch, then please feel free. If you're watching the live comments, get involved. If you're watching as a YouTube video, email me, and please let me know. But I honestly, at the moment, my opinion, you might agree, you might disagree, I deep down feel like Farhad Moshiri cares more about not being proven wrong, i.e. not having to sack Rafa Benitez, because he knows the minute he sacks Rafa Benitez, he's proven wrong, because we can all then say, we told you so. The fans told you it was never going to work. Apparently, according to the media, other members of the board told you it was never going to work. Other people within the media told you it was never going to work. We told you so. I feel like he cares more about not having to face that and not being proven wrong than he does care about where Everton currently are and what Everton, the situation Everton are in. And Jason says, Cam, stop blaming Rafa. In my eyes, it's the players who are wasters. Listen, honestly, don't get me wrong, Rafa Benitez isn't the only problem with the football club. And if he left tomorrow, I'd say that. I'd come out and say, let's not forget that this fella wasn't the only issue. And maybe in another universe, on another planet, in another year, it would have worked for Rafa Benitez at Everton. But the club have got so many issues, from communication, from board members either not doing their jobs properly or not being able to do the job properly, an owner who hasn't got a fucking clue about football, playing staff that aren't very good and don't really care for the majority of them. The club have got that many ingrowing problems around them. It's like a disease at the moment with Everton Football Club. It's like a disease that there's just so much going on that it's just destroying the club internally. And to put Rafa Benitez in there at the helm of it, he was almost set up to fail. But as I said, he isn't blameless, because there's things that he has done, or decisions that he has made that he could have, he could have avoided criticism had he have made a different decision, i.e. using all 3 substitutes against Brentford, i.e. playing a 3 in midfield against Liverpool, i.e. playing a straight 3 in midfield on Sunday and not Andre Gomez in the number 10 when he can't play there. Anyway, yeah, we will go on to talking about the game, because that's what we're here for, isn't it? Let me get into the live comments before we do that. If you are enjoying and you're watching live, please do hit that like button. Jason says, I didn't mean to dig it. No, mate. Listen, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. As I said, I know there's Evertonians out there that don't want to criticise Rafa Benitez. I know there's Evertonians out there that didn't want Rafa Benitez and yet still won't criticise him because they don't believe he's at fault. And that's completely fair enough. That is completely fair enough. But that is, as I said, this is just my opinion. If you are enjoying, by the way, please hit that like button. It does only take a second. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. If you watch as a YouTube video and not live, get your comments in down below and we will get involved with as many of them as possible. Sorry, I'm just giving me glasses a little clean. Got a couple of new pairs of glasses yesterday. Bloody hell, they're expensive glasses, aren't they? Should we just sit here and talk about something else, by the way? Should we just sit here and talk about, like, what we all had for tea? Or are we all looking forward to the new Spider-Man film? Or what are we getting for Christmas? What have we asked for? What are we having on our Christmas? It's just shite talking about Everton, isn't it? It's just absolutely shite talking about Everton at the moment. Every time I watch Everton, I leave the pub, or I turn the telly off, or I leave the ground, and I sort of think, can we just forget about it until next time now? Can we just, like, put it to one side and not have to speak about it? I hate football. I honestly hate football so much, and it's because of Everton Football Club at the moment. It just doesn't bring any joy, does it? You get moments like the game against Arsenal, but we sort of all knew deep down that wouldn't last, that we'd be disappointed again only days later. But yeah, I've got a couple of new pairs of glasses if you're interested in that. Eugene says Everton in talks over major boards change. Yeah, there's been an article released today as to say that Everton have been in talks with a supporters group regarding possible fan representation on the board in the future. I believe those talks are at a very early stage at the moment, so highly doubt that we'll hear anything out of that meeting for some time, but it's a step forward, I suppose. It's a step forward. The board need to hear the fans. Now, what I hope this isn't is just the club saying, okay, yeah, we'll have a fan representation at a board meeting, and then telling that fan representative that they can't speak, or they can't get involved, or they can't have anything to say, or they can't have an opinion. They just have to sit there and listen, because that would just be absolutely pointless, and it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. Eugene says Blackpool Chief drops January transfer hints over Ellis Sims. Does he? Interesting, I haven't seen that. Or does she? He or she? Peter says, did get behind Rafa at the beginning, but enough is enough. He's got to go. He demands full control. He's causing a toxic unrest inside and outside the football club, and he's got form for this out. Yeah, well, listen, as I said, if Rafa Benitez was managing an Everton team that were currently in the top four, or fighting for the top four, or in Europe, and putting up some really good performances and making it difficult for teams to beat us and playing brilliantly, and the players were coming out and talking so positively of him, and we were all dead happy as fans, then it'd be a different conversation to say give him full control, because it'd be working. The reality is the club are talking about giving Rafa Benitez full control, and we're dangerously close to the relegation zone at Christmas, and it's not working. So it's just a baffling decision, in my opinion. New CEO, says Dennis. But that wasn't what the article was about. It was about fan representation. Dave says this is unsettling. When the dam breaks, it really breaks. Yeah. Stephen says I can't see us winning, not with this manager and these cowards. Eugene says Rafa was at the live building yesterday. Yeah, apparently it was a scheduled meeting, so nothing to be excited about. Alright, Cam, it's been a while, mate. Says Stewie, what's happening? Stewie Hernandez says it's truly embarrassing watching Coleman making mistakes every game that leads to goals. Sit him and put Goffy on that side and bring Dean back. Well, I wonder if Rafa Benitez will bring Luca Dean back for Thursday against Chelsea, of course. Lee Dyke says that Rondon substitution probably wiped out more than half of the Rafa supporters. Why protect Richie for Chelsea? We needed to be Palace. Interesting, but if rumours are to be believed on social media, then Richarlison won't be available for Chelsea. We don't know that. Again, there's a lot going about social media at the moment that, some will believe and some won't believe. I personally will wait for Rafa Benitez's press conference tomorrow to hear what he has to say in regards to injuries, because there was a rumour going around a few weeks ago that Alan was injured, and he ended up he was fit the next week. I know obviously he didn't play at the weekend, but this was weeks ago. So I'll wait to see what Rafa Benitez has to say. David says I wouldn't be surprised if Rafa is in charge of the whole game and we're bottom four. Tom says Rafa out. Stewie says, are we looking forward to playing in the Championship next season? Champions League next season, sorry, I mean Championship. I hope we don't go down. Same, mate. Eugene says I think tomorrow will be his last press conference. If that's the case, then sack him now. If the club are genuinely sitting there, and whoever it is, whether it be Mashiri, Ken Wright, and I don't think this is the case, because I do believe them. I do think they're truly going to back Rafa Benitez. But if they're sitting there thinking, right, if we lose to Chelsea, we'll sack him, the odds are, whether Rafa Benitez is in charge, or feckin' me, or Dave from down the road, or Pep Guardiola, or Diego Simeone, the odds are we're probably going to lose to Chelsea because we're away from home and we're shite away from home, and they're a much better team than we are. So if the decision is based on the result on Thursday, sack him now. Put someone else in charge, Duncan Ferguson or somebody in there for the interim, and at least give us that little bit of a bounce, that little bit of a, a bit of a honeymoon moment, should we say, going into the game on Thursday. But as I said, I don't think they've got any intentions or plans to sack Rafa Benitez. Peter says it's soul destroying team. What's happening to the club? Changes are needed from top to bottom. Through the play sorted out, Blues fans deserve better. I agree. And Jason says I've never played football, but surely their over the top wages should encourage them at times. I feel they are overpaid. Well, of course they're. Listen, every footballer is overpaid, mate. Every footballer is overpaid, but no. I agree. Tom says, get this team glasses. Philip says, if you think specs are there, try dental work. Oh, mate, dental work is another conversation, isn't it? I think I paid something like 150 quid for a checkup a couple of years ago. Nearly fell off the seat, mate. Nearly ended up with the little needle thing in my eye. Because I thought, 200 quid? Are you taking the piss? You've only had a little look at my teeth and told me that they're alright. Do one, but then again, glasses knock you back some money, don't they? John says Aldi toffee yum yums are the greatest baked goods of all time. I haven't had one of them, mate. And I do love a yum yum, but I haven't had an Aldi yum yum. I'm gonna have to have an Aldi yum yum now. I've heard Rafa will be Superman in the next film, says David. Interesting. I got my new 80s style glasses, says Everton Azul. It's right, new gigs, fella, says TK. They are new gigs. You're spot on, mate. You're absolutely spot on. There's another comment there about something completely different to football, which I was enjoying reading out, but I've lost it. There you go. It seems like nobody wants to talk about football, and I am fully on board with that. If you are enjoying, by the way, so far, please do hit that like button. 138 people watching. If you could get the likes up, that would be absolutely perfect. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe as well. If you are watching live, get your thoughts in the live comments, and if you watch as a YouTube video, get your thoughts down below, and we'll get involved with as many of them as possible. Let's talk about this absolute disaster then, because it's a review and we have to talk about it. Rafa Benitez obviously released the team news an hour before kickoff, as he does with every game, and I was pleasantly surprised to see him playing a midfield three. I didn't think he would, but I was surprised to see that Rafa Benitez had actually chosen a three in midfield. Now obviously Jordan Pickford was in goal. Luca Dean was still absent, as I think a lot of people expected, considering he put something on his Instagram story on the Saturday of him seemingly not with the squad. Again, I've said my piece on the Luca Dean situation. I know he hasn't been in very good form recently, and I get that if he's got an issue and this, that and the other, but the reality of the situation is, given the injuries at the moment within the squad, given the lack of squad depth, to completely take away a player who is even half decent and fit because of a personal problem is nonsense. Get it sorted, grow up, treat the situation like adults, sort it out and move forward and do what's best for the football club, because I don't think any Blue could sit there and tell me that not having Luca Dean in the squad is better for Everton than having him in there. We can talk about starting and his ability as a left back and Ben Goffrey's recent performances, which have been very good, but even him on the bench is better than him not being in the squad, isn't it? Let's be honest. So yeah, Rafa Benitez started with Luca Dean at left back. Ben Goffrey at left back, Luca Dean still absent. Obviously, we knew Yerry Mina was going to be absent. Rafa Benitez confirmed that in his press conference on Friday. So it was Mason Holgate and Michael Keane playing as a centre-back pairing. Big problems with that straight off the bat. Seamus Coleman started at right back. We thought we had a midfield three of Fabian Delph, Abdoulaye Doucouré and Andre Gomez. We found out, obviously, when the team news was released, that Alan had picked up an injury or certainly wasn't fit enough to start this game. Rafa Benitez did talk briefly about Alan in his press conference and said that he's been training, but he mightn't be ready. So it wasn't a massive surprise to see him out of this one. And then we had a front three of Richarlison, Andros Townsend and Damari Gray, and I suppose the assumption was that it would be Richarlison as the striker, Andros Townsend on one wing and Damari Gray on the other. A midfield three of Andre Gomez, Fabian Delph and Abdoulaye Doucouré, with Abdoulaye Doucouré being the midfielder that could sort of, I suppose, move forward and get into those attacking areas and create chances. And then obviously a flat back line, but it wasn't, was it really? It was almost sort of a 4-2-3-1 or 4-2-1-3, whatever you want to call it, with Andre Gomes. I say playing as a number 10, but he wasn't really playing as a number 10, was he? He was more just sort of hovering around and just sort of, again, walking around the pitch and watching the game. He effectively was a cameraman on the pitch without a camera. And it was baffling, really, because the more and more I think about it, the more and more I think the reason as to why Rafa Benitez has played Andre Gomes in that position is because he's seen him come on against Arsenal and change the game attacking wise, i.e., you know, come on and he had an involvement in both goals, and he did. He was very good when he come on against Arsenal, and he was bursting forward, and he created 2 chances. But anybody that's watched Andre Gomes over the last couple of years or knows Andre Gomes knows that he's not a number 10. He is, capable of picking the ball up and driving it forward, and he can play a decent pass, but he certainly isn't a creative midfielder. He certainly isn't a number 10. He certainly isn't somebody that's going to sit behind the striker and create chances left, right and centre. He never has been, and he never will be that type of player. I would have much rather have had Andre Gomes and Fabian Delph behind Abdoulaye Doucouré playing in a sort of number 10. I'd rather have had Doucouré there than Andre Gomes. So, obviously Andre Gomes was just floating about, sort of in and around the opposition half, not really doing much. And then me other big issue with the team was Richarlison starting on the wing. We spoke on Monday night about Richarlison having arguably his best game in an Everton shirt up front against Arsenal. He scored 3 goals, one which was disallowed ridiculously, the other was marginally offside. His goal that counted was a brilliant header, and he was absolutely fantastic as a striker. He was holding the defenders off. He made Ben White look, I was going to say he made Ben White look shite, but he is shite, isn't he? Let's be honest. He completely embarrassed the Arsenal back line, and to see how we lined up on Sunday and to see him sort of pushed out to the wing and Andros Townsend playing as sort of a false 9 striker with Gomes behind him just didn't really make much sense to me. Now, yes, okay, Richarlison did move into the centre a couple of times throughout the game, but he was isolated. He was massively, massively isolated, and that's something that we've seen a lot over the last couple of weeks and months or so, and it's not through any fault of Richarlison's. It's through lack of quality and creativity within the team, and also managers' tactics, is Richarlison being isolated. I sat there and done the player ratings yesterday, and I've said what I'm about to say numerous times over the last couple of months, and said, well, Richarlison simply can't get a high score, but it's nothing to do with him. It's to do with the fact that he wasn't in the game because he wasn't played into the game. And some people will say, well, he needs to get himself into the game, doesn't he? He needs to go and win the ball back. But the reality is, he's an attacker, he's a striker. He's not going to run out of his position to go and pick the ball up and send to midfield and then try and drive it into that position. Richarlison's, I suppose, way of playing is for him to receive the ball and to run onto it, as he did, for his goal the other day, and as he's done a number of times over the years at Everton. Tom says, Cam, what planning are you on? Richie was a number 9. He certainly wasn't a number 9 for the majority of that first half, mate, because he was stuck on the wing, because I strictly remember thinking, who's playing up front? And it was Andre Gomes playing in this number 10 false 9 position, and Richarlison was stuck on the wing. He, as I said then, he moved into the number 9 on occasion, but he wasn't strictly there for the entirety of the 90 minutes where he should have been. And again, it's these types of decisions from the manager that you sort of look at and you think, you're not helping yourself here. You're simply not. Playing Andre Gomes as a number 10, false 9, whatever you want to call it, is a baffling decision. No matter how much of an impact he had when he come on against Arsenal, he isn't that type of player. He doesn't play in that position. And from the off, Crystal Palace were all over us. Absolutely all over us. As I said before, I think it was 22% possession Everton had in the first half. And we were inviting Crystal Palace on constantly. We were giving them far too much respect. Thomas says that's nonsense. As I must have watched a different game to you then, Thomas, mate. I must have watched a completely different game. Because from what I watched, he was on the wing. If people disagree, then that's fair enough. But from when I was watching, he was playing on the right hand side. But yeah, as I said, we were giving Crystal Palace far too much respect. allowing them to pick the ball up and drive at us. The midfield was pretty much non-existent. Abdoulaye Doucouré was almost stuck as a defensive-minded player, and therefore he couldn't bring the ball out. Therefore he couldn't, burst into those attacking areas. He was frustrated. You could see that with some of the tackles that he was making. You could see that with some of the passes that he was failing to make. He was frustrated. Fabian Delph was sort of just walking around, not really doing anything, running around, but not really ever getting anywhere near the ball. It sort of reminded me of like when you're in school and you I don't know, you're a year 7 and you're playing footy with the year 9s or the year 10s or something, and they're just passing it around you, and you're doing your hardest to run around and try and win it, and the odd occasion you might get stuck in and get your foot in, but more often than not you're just chasing shadows, and that effectively was what Fabian Delph was doing on Sunday. And let's just remind ourselves, by the way, as the title reads and as we all know, we were playing Crystal Palace on Sunday. Again, no disrespect to Crystal Palace, they fully deserved their win, they were much the better team, but we were playing Crystal Palace. We weren't playing Manchester City, we weren't playing Liverpool, we weren't playing Chelsea, we weren't playing Barcelona, Real Madrid, we were playing Crystal Palace, and we were chasing shadows. We were allowing them to create chances, and we never stamp our authority, do we? We never turn up in a game and go, do you know what? We're Everton Football Club, we're going to get at these, we're going to put pressure on them. A lot of teams in this league only require, a brief 10 or 15 minute spell of full pressure, high press, and they'll be forced into making mistakes because they'll panic. They'll make mistakes, they'll pass it round the defence poorly, and, teams can capitalise on that. Everton, I've never known a team to give an opposition side as much space as Everton do. We give every single time an opposition player's got the ball, they've got about 10 or 15 minutes to make a decision. Now, the Premier League is full of, obviously, very good footballers, because they wouldn't be playing in the Premier League if not. A lot of players in the Premier League, if they come under pressure, if you press them high, if you get at them, they'll make mistakes. Look at Manchester City and Liverpool. These two teams aren't just the best teams because they've got the best quality players. They're the best teams in the league. Same with Chelsea, because they work the hardest, because they press the highest, because they force their opposition teams into making mistakes. If Man City and Liverpool stood off teams and went, yeah, you have as long as you want to pass that ball, teams would find it much easier to withstand their quality, but they don't. They're constantly on opposition toes, they're constantly getting at players, they're constantly throwing themselves in, there's never a minute's rest, they work harder than anybody else, and this Everton team just doesn't work hard. It doesn't work hard. There was a moment in the game, I can't remember who it was, but it was in the first half, and as I said, I can't remember which Everton player it was, but the ran at, I think it might have been Damari Gray, ran at one of the Crystal Palace defenders, pressed him dead high up, and he volleyed the ball out from about 5 yards. He volleyed it out for a throw-in. And I was sitting there in the pub watching, thinking, that's it now. Get on them, high press, put the pressure on them, and they'll be forced into making mistakes like that. If you stand off them and give them 10 minutes to make the decision and pass the ball and play it into the midfield, and then you can't get anywhere near them, they'll be fine all day with doing that. And that's what we do to every team. We have moments in games where we press for like 34 seconds, and then we sort of just go back to, it's like when you're playing a video game and you're using a dead slow character, and over the time of the match or whatever you're doing, you get this energy bar, and once the energy bar gets full, you get like, I don't know, half a minute of dead mad running around and getting at people and getting in the face, but then after that you just go back to the usual, dead slow again. That's what Everton are. We have a second or a minute of pressing, and usually within that minute we cause teams, or we force teams into making mistakes, and then we just go back to the usual slow, lethargic, giving teams 45 minutes to make decisions on the ball and not really pressing them and not really making them work hard. And I don't know what that's down to, because this has been the case for Everton for years. So Rafa Benitez, yes, does take the blame, but these players have got to take the blame as well. Are they not fit enough? It can't be a case of, are they not good enough? I know that there's a lot of players within this Everton team that aren't good enough, but you don't need to be a good footballer to know how to press, or to run at a player, or to make a player be forced into a decision because you're getting at them quick. That's nothing to do with quality or how good you are as a footballer. So it's either they're not fit enough, they can't be arsed, or I simply don't know what else it could be. I don't know what else it could be other than not quick enough or can't be arsed doing it. Because it's not hard. It's not hard to press a team, or managers' tactics not allowing them to do it. It just seems like every time we come up against anybody, we give them as much time as they need on the ball. There's never any pressure. There's never any press. There's never anybody getting at teams and forcing them into making mistakes. We did it against Arsenal. We forced Arsenal into making mistakes. We done it against Tottenham a few weeks ago and forced them into it. But when we come up against these teams like Palace and Brentford, we don't seem to do it. And I don't know why. We go watch Man City against Brentford. Watch Liverpool against Brentford. I know that, again, watch Chelsea against Palace, or Chelsea against, or Liverpool against Palace, or City, whatever. These teams, no matter who they're playing, constantly press. And that's why they win a lot of games 3, 4, 5-0. Scorelines like this. It's not just because they've got an unbelievable amount of quality and they're amazing. That obviously helps massively, of course it does. But it's because these teams are constantly pressing, constantly in the face of their opposition, not giving them a second to think. Whereas Everton give their, opposition teams about 2 hours to think. Fucking hell, we may as well sit there and get a cup of tea and go on, mate, you going to make that pass? Oh yeah, if you're going to make that pass, I'll move over here so you can make it here. You can make that pass. It's almost like we're helping them. It's almost like we're saying, oh yeah, look, there's a little pass there. There's a through ball over there if you want to make that. It's fucking nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. And I just don't get it. And that was exactly what we were doing to Crystal Palace in that first half. It was exactly that. We were allowing them to come on to us. We were allowing them to create chances. And once again, as has been the case with a lot of Everton games this season, a goal sort of went from maybe or an if to sort of a when. It wasn't a case of if Crystal Palace were going to score. It was a case of when. It was inevitability. They were having chances. Upon chances, they were getting at us. We weren't looking interested. We were offering nothing going forward. Our tactic was simply just volley it to Demarai Gray and cross our fingers and hope he does something, which is embarrassing. And ironically, I think it was Seamus Coleman volleyed it at Demarai Gray on the edge of our own box. He had to take it down quickly, and he ended up making a mistake. He dinked it over to try and get it to Ben Goffy. I think Ayew gets on the end of it, plays a really good ball into the box, and Conor Gallagher is stood completely unmarked. The Everton defence had gone for a scran, and Conor Gallagher puts it into the back of the net, and it's 1-0 to Crystal Palace. And that inevitable goal comes, and all of a sudden we're 1-0 down, having played dreadful for, the entirety of the first half. And as I said, I've seen a lot of people having a go at Demarai Gray and saying, oh, why is Demarai Gray doing that? Why is Demarai Gray doing that? Listen, Demarai Gray's a fault. There's absolutely no, there's no getting around that. Demarai Gray is a fault 100%. I understand that and I agree with that. However, the reality is, A, why is Seamus Coleman smashing it at him from about 5 yards out? But B, why is Conor Gallagher one of the most informed players in the Premier League and an extremely clever and good footballer, and a footballer that I absolutely hope somebody at Everton is looking at thinking, we're going to go in for him in the summer before Crystal Palace do. Why is he standing on his own in the box? We can talk about the Demarai Gray's mistake, but you've got Mason Holgate there, who shouldn't be nowhere near an Everton side. Michael Keane, who's meant to be an experienced Premier League centre-half. A couple of the midfielders in there, and a lad who this Everton team will have known is capable of scoring goals is stood on his own in the box. It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. Palace go 1-0 up, and yeah, Everton need serious changes. But again, you're not sort of looking at the game going, alright, we're 1-0 down here, but we've played well, or we're getting at them, or we're creating chances. You're looking at the game thinking, that's it. We're 1-0 down. We ain't coming back into it. They'll probably add to their lead. There's no motivation. There's no energy. There's no aggression. There's no passion. There's no determination. There's no press. There's no nothing. There was nothing. It was another nothing performance. Soul-destroying, soul-draining performance. And yet, we all of a sudden, we're 1-0 down. Anyway, let's get into the live comments before we do talk about the second half. I want to talk about the second goal. I want to talk about Solomon Rondon as well. Obviously, come on and got a goal. The Richarlison substitution as well. We're going to talk about all of that. If you are enjoying, by the way, please hit that like button. 150 people, 140 people watching. If you could get those likes up, it would be brilliant. We're on 45 at the moment. If you could get them maybe towards the 100 mark, that would be brilliant. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. That would mean an absolute massive amount to me as well. If you're watching live, get your thoughts in the live comments. We'll get involved with as many of them as we can. If you're watching a YouTube video, leave your thoughts down below. Warren says Benitez will get rid of most of this team. They're just holding on for cash. I don't think he will, because I don't think he can, because I don't see... we have this every summer or every January when there's a transfer window, and people say, well, why don't we just sell Iwobi for 20 million, and why don't we just sell John Joe Kenny for 10 million? Who's paying the money for these players? Who is paying any form of decent money for anybody within this Everton squad that we don't want to sell? Look at Dominic Calvert-Lewin, you'll get money for him. Jordan Pickford, yeah. You know, Richarlison, yeah. Luca Dean, yes, probably. But they're 4 players that I'd say 99% of Evertonians would want to keep a hold of. Everybody that we would declare as players that we would be happy to sell aren't going to go for any real money, because, shock horror, they're all fucking shite. These players are soft. John says kicking people up and down the ears and grafting is not the answer, otherwise you will pick 11 fans from the street. It's not the answer, no, but I'm not talking about kicking people up and down in the air. I'm talking about working hard, pressing high. The Manchester City kick people up in the air? No. The Liverpool kick people up in the air? No. And yes, granted, they've got better players than Everton are, but their players work harder than ours, and there's no excuse for that. There's absolutely no excuse for that. Where are we? Phil says, I don't think Rafa or Ancelotti listened to anything Duncan said. They didn't pick him. Bright Guy says, what is going on with Dean? Rumours of Rafa have benched him after the blow-up. Well, yeah, that's what's happening. JT says, after Zeliganadi's performance making us look shite, I hope he turns up for Crystal Palace more often, not just to embarrass teams that don't need the help getting embarrassed. Yeah. Interesting. God help me, lad, going Chelsea Thursday and was there Sunday. Just want to see some fight. Is right, Dom. You absolutely, again, massive respect to fans like Dom who go up the length and breadth of the country to go and watch Everton, every week and watch us despite what we're going through at the moment. You know, the heart and soul of this football club, and the football club don't deserve fans. Our fans. This football club don't deserve our fans. Well, I've said Hammers was a gem we lost. Cam, do you miss Hammers? I miss having a player of his quality in the team. Yeah, can't lie. Leon says I'd only keep Richie, Gray and Pickford. Leon says, Cam, stop comparing to City and them. You'll never be happy they play a different sport. But I'm not comparing. I'm not sitting here and saying, why can't we be like them? Why can't we have the quality that they have? This isn't my point. My point isn't that why aren't we like Man City or Liverpool or this or this, that and the other or these teams because of the quality they've got or because they're winning titles. My point is those teams aren't just the teams with the best players in. They're the teams that work the hardest. It's simple. And yes, we can't be like those teams because they've got much better players than we have and they're on a different dimension than we are. But there's no excuse for our players to not work as hard as their players. In fact, there's 2 excuses. They're either not fit enough to do it or not arsed enough. It's nothing to do with not being good enough. Nothing to do with not being... You don't have to be good to work hard. I won't take any other answer than that. You don't have to be good to work your arse off. So you're either not wanting to do it because you can't be arsed, or you're not fit enough to do it, and they're 2 big issues in my opinion. Paul says, have you heard anything on Big Dunk leaving rumours? Greg O'Keefe, I think it was, come out and said he believes it's nonsense. I wouldn't believe them. I wouldn't believe them personally, but stranger things have happened, but I wouldn't believe them. Dom says he's not comparing our quality, he's comparing our fighting determination to get the ball, the simple things. Yeah, spot on. John says we should be like them. They don't have more money than us. Leanne says, okay, my bad, got the wrong end of the stick, no excuse for not working hard. Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying why aren't we like them, why haven't we got the quality. I'm saying they work harder than us, and it shouldn't be the case. Couple of Liverpool fans in here today. Hope you're alright. Don't know why, but hope you're alright. Hydro says Gray is the best player we've got. Gray is decent, and Townsend and Rondon and that Goffy are shite, says Smokey. Sean says if the players were not carrying out Benitez's orders, they wouldn't be in the team, or he will be blaming them for the results. Responsibility lies with the manager, board and owner. Spot on. Brendan says, Cam, let's all admit it, we'd be happy to have Big Sam back. You know it's the truth. I wouldn't, personally. But I'd just be happy if just... I'd just be happy if we won a game of footy and then won another one the week after. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Winning 2 games on the bounce. Roberto Martinez as manager says Mr. Dominic. I think this will all end at Chelsea, says David. What? Rafa's reign. JT says it looks like many of them can be arsed, but don't have much backing from others that do not. Interesting. James says the club is just suffering massively. I mean, massively from mismanagement. Yes, somebody has to be rubbish in 17th high. Yes, it is us, says John. Phil says we need a motivator. Look at how many games we start slowly and get Duncan as an interview until the end. As an intern until the end of the season. We'll pick up the arse up before they step on the pitch. Well, if Rafa Benitez is sacked, then I would assume it would be Duncan Ferguson in the interim job, and I don't think that would be necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, there you go. James says you can't keep comparing us to Chelsea, City and Liverpool, etc. Their teams who are stable, smart bars with budget. Again, I'm not comparing us to those teams because of the quality of their players or the players they've bought. I'm comparing us to those teams because they work harder, and there's no excuse for that. Yeah. Anyway, let's get straight into the game again then. Mr. Dominic says, Cam, open a bottle of whiskey and stay on for at least 6 hours. I wish, mate. I wish I could, but I can't, unfortunately. And I don't really like whiskey, to be honest with you. I don't really like whiskey. I'm not going to lie. I don't. If you're enjoying, by the way, please hit that like button. It only does take a second, and don't forget to subscribe if you are new as well. If you're watching live, get your thoughts in the live comments. If you're watching a YouTube video, get your thoughts down below as well. John says, name names, Cam. Then who is lazy? I'd say every single Everton player on a normal on a regular basis. Okay, you could look at Arsenal as an you could look at Arsenal as an anomaly, because it was an anomaly, because A, we won a game of footy, and B, players worked hard. But I think, generally speaking, every single player could work a bit harder every week. I do. I don't think there's one Everton player that can sit there and go, I give everything every week. I just don't think there is. And if there is, then there's not many of them. There's certainly not many of them. Anyway, let's get back into the game. So we're 1-0 down. Responsibility is on Rafa Benitez to change this around. It's very clear at half-time that this isn't working. It's very clear at half-time that, things aren't going well. We're losing the game. We are, ultimately this is a game that, again, we must win, because we needed to get some momentum. We needed to get some confidence coming into a really, really difficult game on Thursday against Chelsea. Sticks with the same 11. Obviously, again, Andre Gomez sort of just playing in that number 10 role, not really doing anything. He had one chance, Andre Gomez, in the game in the first half. Brian Goffy, who I thought was the the shining light on Sunday, to be honest with you. I did think he was the shining light on Sunday. I thought he was really, really good as a left back. I think he got forward. I think he tried to create chances. He ultimately, he tried his very hardest, and again, you can't really put too much blame on Ben Godfrey. We have had an update as we speak, by the way. We've had an update on Richarlison, Seamus Coleman and Andros Townsend. The club have said that Richarlison was forced off early in the second half at Selhurst Park, and a subsequent scan has revealed the Brazilian suffered a tear in his calf. The 24-year-old is expected to be sidelined for a number of weeks. Great. Andros Townsend sustained a small fracture in his foot following a challenge with an opposition player in the game. His condition will be reviewed by specialists later this week after an X-ray diagnosed the problem. And Seamus Coleman suffered bone bruising and soft tissue damage, and he will be continued to be assessed over the next few days. So just to round that up, Richarlison is set to be out for a number of weeks with a tear in his calf. Andros Townsend has suffered a small fracture in his foot and will continue to be assessed, and will have an X-ray later this week, probably be out for a number of weeks. And Seamus Coleman has suffered bruising and again is likely to be out for a number of weeks as well. And yeah, Everton fucking Football Club. What more can we say? What more can we say? Everton fucking Football Club. Richarlison, who is one of our only shining lights of recent, is now set to be out for a number of weeks. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, we still don't know when he will return. Andros Townsend, who I don't think has been particularly great recently, is out as well. Yeah. What can we do? What can we do? Anyway, as I said, Ben Goffy, I think was a shining light. I think he put in an a really good performance considering he was playing out of position, considering he was playing at left back. He got a ball to Andre Gomes in the first half, and Andre Gomes' shot was saved, and that was pretty much the only action of the first half, wasn't it? Let's be honest. In terms of Everton, in terms of an Everton's attacking sense. And yet we come out in the second half, and a change needs to be made. We know we need to get back in the game. We know we need to seriously step it up a level. But again, the manager doesn't make that proactive change. Again, the manager doesn't take that decision. He continues to watch. He continues to watch Crystal Palace getting at us, walking through our midfield as if they're non-existent, pressing us constantly. Watch us, not press at all, not get involved, not battle, not work hard. At this point, Richarlison was completely out the game. I know, okay, he might have suffered that injury, but I know at this point he was completely out the game. Andros Townsend was out the game. Damari Gray wasn't involved much. And they get a corner. Now, the corner does stem from what I think is a foul on Seamus Coleman. But as I've said, it doesn't matter because Everton players don't seem to want to back their teammates up. They don't seem to want to get in the face of referees. They don't seem to want to demand decisions from VAR. They just don't seem to want to do any of that. So it doesn't matter whether I think it was a foul on Seamus Coleman. Seamus Coleman obviously didn't think it was a foul because he didn't get in the referee's face. In the same way as that Fabian Delph didn't get in the referee's face when Wilfred Zaha raised an arm to him in the opening couple of minutes, which should have seen Wilfred Zaha sent off. And in the same way that Seamus Coleman didn't get in the referee's face when Christian Benteke stamped down his leg, which once again should have seen Christian Benteke sent off. He decided instead, Seamus Coleman, to walk away and, almost as if to say, yeah, everything's all right, don't worry about it. But anyway, corner comes in. Once again, defensively, we are an absolute disgrace. I think it's Tompkins at the back post, heads it into the back of the net, and all of a sudden we're 2-0 down. And you knew at that point, I knew anyway, deep within, that was it. Game, set, and match. We were never coming back from that then. And yeah, Palace's lead was one that would see them win the game. The manager makes a change. He brings Richarlison off for Rondon. Now, 10 minutes ago, I'd have probably sat here and had a massive rant about that substitution. Richarlison very clearly didn't look too happy about it. However, obviously, scans have suggested that he's had quite a serious injury, and clearly there was a reason for him coming off. One thing I would say is that he pulled up with discomfort to his calf in the first half. So if there was a problem identified then, why keep him on until the 60th minute and then take him off? Why not just take him off in the first half? Why not take him off when it happened? But obviously, look, he was injured. It was quite a serious injury, and he was taken off. So I'm not going to sit here and spend too much time talking about that. Rondon does come on. We start to show a little bit, as I said, that little 5-minute spell of our energy bar had gone up, and we'd pressed L1 and R1 on the PlayStation pad, and we'd activated our energy mode, which only lasts for a minute. We had a little spell of a bit of pressure, putting the pressure on Crystal Palace, getting forward, trying to create chances. We get a goal back. Ball falls to Solomon Rondon. He takes it down really, really well. Lays it off to Abdoulaye Doucouré. He takes a shot. It's saved. And Solomon Rondon is quick to react to get on the end of it. Again, massive credit where credit's due. I've been critical of Solomon Rondon, as has everybody else this season. But massive credit where it's due. He was alive. He was awake. He got on the end of it. And he ultimately made a really, really key decision and put the ball in the back of the net, and all of a sudden with 15 minutes to go it's 2-1, and you're sort of thinking, right, can we get back into this game here? Can we go and get an equaliser? We've got 15 minutes. Crystal Palace will have sort of been thinking, oh shit, what do we do now? We're on the ropes a little bit here. Can we go and capitalise on that? But again, as I said, we revert back to the typical get our heads down and just sort of plod along, not really search after the goal, really create anything else. Anthony Gordon would come on at this point. He had the biggest chance, I suppose, to equalise, where he got played in. Really, really good bit of play. He got played in one-on-one with the goalkeeper. He takes a shot. It's saved. Maybe he could have passed it. I think in that situation for an attacker, they're always going to shoot, aren't they? He shoots, and it is saved by Gaeta. And that, you sort of felt like that was the moment. You sort of felt like that was the time to get the equaliser. That was the moment to score. And once Anthony Gordon didn't score that, again, deep down, I think we all knew that was going to spell the end of the game. That was going to spell ultimately the last, I suppose, real good chance we had. I remember sitting there and turning to my dad and saying that was it. That was the chance. That was the moment. He didn't take it. Fast forward a couple of minutes later, Palace go up the other end. Seamus Coleman tries aggressively to volley the ball at a Crystal Palace attacker, misses him from a yard out. It falls to Andre Gomez. He dilly-dallies about with it. It falls to Conor Gallagher and he puts it in the back of the net, and it's 3-1 and it's game over. And Everton have lost another game of football through an absolutely dreadful performance, and another game that leaves us all sitting here saying, how long does this form need to continue before the club make a change? I don't know. As I've just read out, we've now got a couple of big injuries. Richarlison looks like he'll be out for a matter of weeks, and Josh Townsend looks like he'll be out for a matter of weeks, and obviously Seamus Coleman is injured and will be addressed as well. But Richarlison's out, Dominic Calvert-Lewin's out. Can we rely on Solomon Rondon up front? Because let's be honest, I know people talking about Ellis Sims, but Ellis Sims won't get a chance, let's be honest. So will be Solomon Rondon. Can we rely on Solomon Rondon? I don't think we can. So not only are we in absolutely dreadful form and dangerously close to the relegation zone at Christmas, we're there without our two, I don't even want to say two best attacking players, our two only really goal scorers. Yes, you've got Graham Townsend there, but in terms of clinical, consistent goal scorers, we've only really got Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and they're both out injured. It just isn't looking good at the moment. It just simply isn't looking good for Everton. If you are enjoying, please hit that like button. It does only take a second if you're new. Don't forget to subscribe as well. JT says, is there a training regimen issue? I can see that leading to injuries is a chronic problem if bad enough. Well, it would suggest that these players are performing some form of karate in training, wouldn't it really? Because, or certainly, they're not at that, we've had Decore who suffered a broken foot in a game. We've had Richarlison who suffered an injury in a game, and Josh Townsend who suffered an injury in a game. We can't just be the unluckiest team in the world. There's got to be something that isn't quite right with the medical department. Blackpool wants Sims. Sims says, will be Rondon for the first half, Tossen for the second half. Great. Richarlison only has 3 goals this season. Yeah, he hasn't been in great form this season, but he's also been injured this season as well, which I think is to take into consideration. Joseph says the best sulking in the Premier. Richarlison brings the kids in our babies nursery to shame. That one whopping. I disagree, but fair enough. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Ket says, can what could possibly be causing all these issues, injuries week in, week out, in your opinion? It obviously can't be put down to bad luck. I don't know, mate. I don't know. I wish I did know. I really, really wish I knew. Play all our worst players against Chelsea, says John. Buff Everton next season update. This is bollocks, says JT. Roberto Martinez has been in relegation dogfights in the past and kept Wigan afloat for many years. He's the right man to replace Martinez. Benitez, he also got Wigan relegated, which is something to take note of, I think. Lonergan is back up striker, says David. Yeah. Tim says, are you looking forward to seeing Kenny and Tosin playing against Chelsea? Ananda says, don't assume you've hit rock bottom because it can always get worse. Everton Football Club, ladies and gentlemen. That there by Hernandez is the comment of the week. That never ever assume with Everton that it's rock bottom because it will always get worse. Spot on, mate. Unfortunately, spot on. Mr. Dominic says, to be honest, we've had too many chairmen with this Philip Carter. Yeah. Again, the issues with Everton run deep. Warren says, we have too many issues to sort out. Where do we start? That's it. It is. I agree. With Everton at the moment, it's sort of like, what issue do we address first? Because there's that many of them. David says, thank God Rafa subbed Richie. Could have been a bad injury. Yeah. Stewie says, Machine needs to sit back and look at the people and let people do their job because he doesn't have a clue. Yeah. Spot on. John says, life has a funny way of surprising you when you are down. Let's hope that that happens to us. Stay positive. We are Everton. Let's hope, mate. Let's hope. John says the problem is people who are signing off on our players and choosing the managers aren't fit for purpose. Until that changes, the club is fucked. I agree. And Anders says, but can we hear every week that Don will be back in a couple of weeks? Yeah, I'm not I'm not sitting here and even discussing the possibility of Dominic Calvert-Lewin being back for the weekend, because I don't think he will be. I agree with you. Jack says, yes, lad, just called the team now, finished work. Is right, mate. Mr. Dominic says we are second from bottom in terms of possession, yet we have a Spanish manager. Yes, we're also, I think, second from bottom in regards to long ball play, and that's all we seem to do. So that's how bad we are at the moment. A lot of us just taking the piss at the juncture and just fair in chat. I mean, yeah, is Benitez planning a rebuild? What would it look like? A shambles. Dan says, I've given up hope of Rafa turning around. His tactical decisions are mad, and his comments are even stranger. He talks about player protection, but where was that protection for Mina? Yeah, Mr. Dominic said Palace had 62% possession, and Chris says not being able to get onto a live stream for a while, being too busy, unfortunately. No worries, mate. He says keep up the good work. Always love the show. Thank you very much. Well, look, we're going to finish it up there then. I do apologise that I wasn't able to get involved in all of the live comments. Once again, a massive thank you to everybody for getting involved in the live comments. Over 150 people watching concurrently again, so I really do appreciate it. If you have enjoyed this one, please hit that like button. If you've watched a YouTube video, get your thoughts down below, and we'll get involved with as many of them as possible. And also, please hit the like if you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new. It only takes a second. We will be back tomorrow with the game preview to our Premier League fixture against Chelsea on Thursday. I'm really looking forward to that one, as you can tell. But yeah, another defeat for Rafa Benitez, another defeat for Everton, and leaves us all with that question of how long does this continue before a decision is made, because this club is going only one way, and as I said before, it's in first class on the fast bullet train to relegation, and I don't know how we get out of this situation at the moment, to be honest with you. I really don't, especially considering the injuries that we've got and that we seemingly are getting week in, week out. But there you go. John Jones says, thank you, Cam. Cheers, my mate. Tactically inept, says Ben Dinosaur. Yeah, I agree. Anyway, look, there you go. Big thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this one, please do hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe if you are new as well. We'll be back tomorrow with the game preview to the Chelsea game. Join us for that one. We'll just try and have a laugh and talk about anything that isn't football. OCG says, cheers, Cam. Keep the faith, mate. Thank you very much. Joseph says, cheers, Blue. Cheers, mate. Hubba Wobie has 50% removal on his salary. I doubt that. Anyway, big thank you all for watching, and we'll see you soon on the Mighty Blues.